All right, let's dive right into one of history's most fascinating and honestly kind of baffling electrical puzzles. So take a look at this. For over 80 years, this thing, known as the Baghdad Battery, has just completely stumped historians and scientists. I mean, it's just a clay jar, a copper tube, and an iron rod. Simple, right? But get this, it's 2,000 years old. And that brings us to the million-dollar question. Was this the world's first battery? I mean, it looks like a battery. The design just screams yes. But could people from 2,000 years ago really have figured out how to harness electricity? We're talking nearly 2 millennia before Alessandro Volta supposedly invented the thing. So this is where the puzzle really gets good. It all starts with its discovery and just how, well, strange the construction is. Every little piece seems intentional, like it has a specific job to do. But for the longest time, nobody could figure out what on earth that job was. And so for decades, the case just went cold. People tried to figure it out, but every attempt to solve the puzzle just led to more questions and a whole lot of dead ends. People tried to recreate it, right? Even the Mythbusters had a crack at it, but all they could ever get was this tiny, barely noticeable charge. We're talking less than half a volt, enough to maybe feel a little tingle on your tongue, but definitely not enough to do anything useful that you could actually see. And that's the real kicker, right? The results just didn't add up with the design. I mean, if you're trying to build a battery, why on earth would you use a leaky, unglazed jar? And why use solder, a mix of tin and lead, on the copper tube when any battery maker will tell you pure metals are way better? It made no sense at all. The whole thing seemed like it was designed to fail. But then, a breakthrough. A recent one. It came from looking at two little details that pretty much everyone else had just overlooked. And it turns out, these weren't flaws at all. They were the secret ingredients. Okay, so you remember those two so-called problems, the leaky jar and the weird solder? Well, get this. They weren't mistakes. Not at all. They were the keys to unlocking a whole second battery hidden right there in plain sight. Okay, so let's get into this new theory because this is where the ancient engineering gets really clever, and we see how this thing could actually be a powerhouse. So it turns out those parts everyone ignored, the solder and the porous jar, they actually form a specific type of battery. It's called a tin-air battery. And what's wild is that this design is so efficient, so powerful, that scientists are actually researching it for modern tech today, and yet the basic idea was sitting in a museum inside this 2,000-year-old jar. Yeah, this really shows you the new theory in action. The Baghdad battery wasn't just one simple battery. No, it was two, working together as a team. The tin and the solder, that's the fuel. The porous jar, that's the barrier. And the power source? It's literally the oxygen from the air around it. How cool is that? And this hidden outer battery, just using the solder, some simple lye you can make from wood ash, and that leaky jar, it generates over 1.1 volts all by itself. That's not a small jump. That is a huge leap from the tiny charge everyone was getting before. So here's how the whole thing works together. You've got that inner cell, the iron rod and copper tube, which gives you a little bit of power, around 0.35 volts. But then, the real magic happens. That hidden outer tin-air battery kicks in, adding a powerful 1.1 volts to the mix. And because of the genius design, they're automatically connected in series. Their power adds up, giving you a grand total of over 1.4 volts. And that is enough to do some real work. And look at this. A modern recreation proves it. They built one using the same ancient materials, hooked it up to a voltmeter, and boom! It easily clears that 1.4 volt mark. This isn't just a theory. It actually works. So the big question is, what can you actually do with 1.4 volts? Well, it turns out a lot, and the proof is immediate and, frankly, undeniable. With that kind of power, you can drive real, visible chemical reactions. Check this out. When they hooked it up to a copper plate in salt water, it started bubbling almost instantly. It's literally splitting the water into hydrogen and oxygen gas. Those bubbles you see, that's real electrical power at work. And it gets even better. After leaving it overnight, the effect is just crystal clear. The plate on the left, the one hooked up to the battery, is visibly etched. Compare that to the control plate on the right, totally unchanged. This shows it could have been used for all sorts of things, maybe electroplating jewelry or etching designs into metal. Okay, and here it is, the final piece of the puzzle. This is the smoking gun. After running the experiment, look at the solder on the copper tube. It's all corroded and oxidized. This is the proof, right here, that the tin in the solder was being used up. It was the fuel for that powerful outer battery. So there you have it, an 80-year-old mystery solved. And the conclusion is, well, it's stunning. This is probably the strongest evidence we've ever had that people had a working knowledge of electrochemistry almost 2,000 years before we thought it was invented. I think the big takeaway from all of this is that ancient ingenuity might be way more advanced, way more clever than we've ever given it credit for. I mean, this thing wasn't just some primitive curiosity. It was a seriously sophisticated piece of engineering. And it really makes you wonder, right? If they could do this 2,000 years ago, what other incredible secrets does the ancient world still hold? What else is just sitting out there waiting for us to finally figure it out?